Hi everyone, meteorologist Joel Curtis with your Alaska weather. These are forecasts that are issued Friday, August 15th. First of all, I just want to take a moment to review all the stuff that's happened over the last couple of weeks. We had a magnitude 8.8 earthquake just off of Kamchatka, and very fortunate that not much damage was done from a tsunami that emanated from that. At the same time, almost just very shortly after, a couple of volcanoes went off, and the problem child over there is one called Klevitskoy, and that has put ash into the air. The heavier particulates have fallen out over very, very close to the volcano. But the ash in the air did disrupt the Trans-Pacific air routes for a couple of days, and then lately, the ash has been more concentrated over the Bering Sea and not so much in the way of the air routes, but we've had lots of SIGMETs. Those are aviation warnings for ash that's aloft. Not always to the surface, but ash that's up high enough that it can affect the jet routes. Then we had a magnitude 5.4 earthquake in Tracy Arm, that's about 60 miles southeast of Juneau, and that caused a landslide, and a tsunami was generated, and scientists are now studying that to see what the effects. Some kayakers lost some gear that were camping out there, but the run-up was estimated to be 470 to 500 meters, very close to the landslide, and of course the impacts were less as you got further away from it. Then, on August 12th and 13th, we had a record flood on the Mendenhall River due to a glacier lake outburst flooding. The record was 16.65 feet, and there were barriers that were erected prior to the floods, and those really, really helped. And they're being studied right now as to all the effectiveness and the lessons learned that we had from that flood. So it's been a very, very active week for the National Weather Service. Actually, the last couple or 3 weeks have been very, very active for us. I've been deployed, and a bunch of my colleagues have been to various emergency operations center, and so it's been a real experience for the last few days. So let's take a look at the fire weather, which is very near and dear to me because I do wildland fire deployments at times. So today and tomorrow, it looks like the eastern interior is going to get some rain. And that's going to wet the surface fuels in the Yukon Flats. Surface fuels in the Matsu and Kenai Peninsula will start to dry out as northwesterly winds do some downslope over the Alaska and Aleutian Range. And then we have light showers will continue to wet the west coast and also the north slope. And we'll talk about that in a minute. And the outlook is for the rest of the interior, we'll have nicer but still mild weather as pressure builds from the southwest. So a trough over the northwest coast will prevent much warmer and clearer conditions. So just taking a quick look at the grass adjective, which is a indicator of the fuel that would carry ground fire. That is most dry and still only to very high for the Kenai Peninsula, Matsu Valley, a little bit and down to Kodiak Island, and as well as the Bristol Bay area and the northern part of the Alaska Peninsula. The spruce adjective, however, very, very confined to medium fuel dryness. That would be for the Matsu Valley and the western Kenai Peninsula. So now let's take a look at our satellite image, and what you can see is a low down in the Gulf, just south of Haida Gwaii, and then there's also a weak trough frontal system extending northward out of that. And you can see that right along the Alcan border. And then also we have a little bit of moisture in the air, but it's still generally high clouds moving up to the west coast and a little bit up to the Pribilofs from the southwest. So let's take a look at the surface map. 991 millibar low, just off of Dixon Entrance. We've got a cold front extending to the southeast from that, and a trough extending to the south. There's that line in the trough that I have along the Alcan border, and that is causing some showers and maybe a slight risk of a thunderstorm somewhere along it. But also the higher elevations may be getting just a little bit of light snow. And then with the onshore flow up on the Beaufort Seacoast, just a little bit of very light snow up in that region as well. A little bit of precipitation around a very weak low in the Bering Sea. And then as we get into Saturday, that low continues to weaken off of Haida Gwaii, about 995 millibars. It has a weak trough that extends far to the northwest. And that is also that pressure gradient that you see along that Cook Inlet there is causing those northwest winds that will be around tomorrow. Also, some precipitation in the remnants of that system that's right along the Alcan border. And then there's a weak cold front that's moving on to the west coast, and that's causing precipitation. High pressure over the Bering Sea. Wow, a high over the Bering Sea. 1023 millibars. And then we have a warm front that's moving up toward the Aleutians, so a little precipitation out ahead of that. And then what we're seeing too is, again, this is a very weak front. That cold front that was moving across is just a little bit further to the east now. Precipitation along the north slope, maybe a little mixed precipitation right along the coast. Precipitation still remnants along the Alcan border and also the Wrangell St. Elias Mountains and into the Panhandle, as well as down through Dixon Entrance. That low, in the meantime, that was off of Haida Gwaii is now weakened to 1,007 millibars and not a very big player. Weak trough extending up through south central Alaska. Just not a whole lot going on. You don't see a whole lot of lines on the map to give you the wind forecast. So not a whole lot in the wind. There are no watches and warnings in effect right now, and very few looking at in the future at all. And then for Monday, the pattern it weakens up even more with a big action area in the far western Bering Sea and over in Russia. 1021 millibar high over the Bering Sea. Wow, again, over the Bering Sea. And then 1,007 millibar low has just drifted even further south and just really, really weak. Maybe a little bit of precipitation along the north slope into the western Brooks Range and down around the eastern end of Norton Sound. Again, very light precipitation, hardly any wind with this. So let's go over the temperatures. So looking in the 30s along the north slope, maybe down to into the upper 20s as you get up to the Brooks Range, Adigan Pass, Anatuvik area. And then 30s as you get a little bit further south. You might see a few, especially with breaks in the clouds, that will allow radiative cooling. 40s along the west coast and maybe a few lows in the 50s for southeast Alaska and along the Gulf Coast. And then for Saturday afternoon, temperatures climbing all the way up into the 50s for much of the north slope, but then a few readings of high temperatures in the 40s as you get farther to the east in that little band of precipitation that we were showing earlier. Lots of 60s across the central portion of the state, 50s along the west coast, 60s as you go out the Alaska Peninsula, 56 to the Pribilofs. And then we might see a reading or two of 70 in south central Alaska, and then lots of readings in the 60s, maybe 70 down by Ketchikan or so. And then for the low temperatures on Sunday morning, again, 30s along the north slope, lots of readings in the 40s in the central interior, a few readings in the 30s. Again, any place that you got cleared off, you can get that radiative cooling that would cool things down into the 30s. Otherwise, low temperatures in the 40s for much of the state, A few readings in the 50s for Sunday morning along the West Coast and out the Alaska Peninsula, and then also some readings in the 50s for the Panhandle. And then for Sunday afternoon, now temperatures cooling off with a series of cooler air that has moved across the North Slope. But then the eastern portion is seeing highs in the 50s. Soon as you get south of the Brooks Range, lots of readings in the 60s, maybe an odd reading in the 70s or so. 60s out across the Alaska Peninsula, 50s out into the Bering Sea, and then well into the 60s for southeast Alaska. So let's take a look at our long-term forecast. It's showing pretty high chances of warmer than normal as you get along the southern tier of the state. And then as you move further north, less and less chance, but still indicators that it's going to be above normal temperatures, also for the Panhandle and out into the Aleutians, including and also the Pribilof Islands as well. And then for our precipitation for 6 to 10 days, August 21st to 25th, our highest probability of above normal precipitation will be the northwestern third of the state. And then looks like that tapers off to below normal precipitation for the Panhandle and the Yakutat area. Then so that's it for our public forecast. Thanks for tuning in, and y'all stay safe out there.